Yes, I just cheered for myself. Hi guys, welcome to Bad Beauty. We decided to have a beauty panel on the ugliest day of the year and the ugliest month of the year. But here we are to talk about beauty and what it means to us, beauty standards, and everything going on today. I'm going to let the women here introduce themselves so you can know what their books are about and why the hell they belong on this panel in the first place. Phoebe, why don't you start?
Yes, so my book is coming out October 4th, and it's called You Can't Touch My Hair, and other things I still have to explain. And it's an essay collection about race, gender, pop culture stuff, some personal stories from my life, my obsession with like Michael Fassbender and U2. There's a lot happening in this book. And it was super fun to write. It's my first book. I'm very excited, and hopefully you guys will read it.
It comes out in
October 4th.
Got it.
So it's a little ways away.
Put it on your list.
My name's Georgia Clark. My book, The Regulars, came out a couple of weeks ago. It has a beautiful pink cover. I see some people holding it. And it's about 3 young women living in Brooklyn who get their hands on something called Pretty, which turns you into your ideal physical self for 1 week at a time. So it deals pretty explicitly with the allure and idea of beauty, the upsides and the downsides.
My name's Emily Schultz, and my recent novel is called The Blondes. It's newish, and what it is it's about a rabies-like virus that makes women, blonde women, natural or dyed, rage out. And I wrote it because I felt like people aren't afraid enough of women, and maybe they should be, and we should get angry because there's a lot of shit going on.
Amen. My name is Autumn Whitefield-Madrano. I'm the author of Face Value, The Hidden Ways Beauty Shapes Women's Lives. And it looks at sort of the generation of women who came of age after the ideas in the beauty myth were floating around out there. And what I found was that there was a lot of complex and contradictory attitudes toward beauty, which is why I'm really excited for this panel.
Yeah, that brings up the point of the panel, which is the beauty standard. When I first heard that word, I was like, is there still a beauty standard? And we talked about this a bit, and we sort of agreed there is. So, Georgia, since you are the reason we are here, what is the beauty standard you sort of grew up with and you've been holding yourself up to, and do you think it's still around?
Well, the beauty standard that I kind of looked to explore in the fiction of The Regulars was, and the way the Pretty works on the girls is this sort of in this sort of homogenous way in which it kind of makes them sort of thinner, more tone, like lustrous hair, clear skin, like sort of proportioned, like ass and boobs. So in a way that kind of cuts across a lot of different sort of ideas of what we think beauty is. I think it's such an interesting question because I think the beauty standard is something that changes within whatever kind of tribe you're in, and that we all, in this kind of day and age, I don't think that we're all just sort of these slaves to Maybelline ads and we are expressing ourselves through the ways that we present ourselves, but at the same time, I'm just sort of interested in the parameters of choice with it, like, if we all just stopped grooming ourselves, would we still be as powerful as we want to be? That's sort of a question I'm interested in. So I definitely think that beauty standards exist in a very kind of commercial mainstream sense and within sort of like the communities that I sort of see here in this room. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I was interested in exploring in The Regulars.
Phoebe, if we talk about the beauty tribe and living up to the beauty standard in a beauty tribe, did you have any beauty standard you tried to live up to growing up, or do you now?
Yeah, I think being a woman of color in America is like, okay. Just because most things are not, you're very much reminded that, hey, you don't look like I don't look like Jennifer Aniston. Like, I will never look like her, and that's totally fine by me. But, it does, you feel like there's a lot of Eurocentric stuff that's happening. You don't fit within that. And in my book, I have this essay where I talk about my hair journey and how I used to perm my hair. This is a weave because I can't deal with my fro in the summer. It's too much of a thing. Black people know, they're nodding. It's a lot of work, so I'll wear weaves in summer. But yeah, I talk about my hair journey, how I went from like straightening my hair and like the conditioning of that, because I mean, my mom started straightening my hair when I was like 5 or 6 years old, And then I was perming my hair for a while and really damaged my hair. I just went through all the feels of like, you know, learning what my identity is and why I was so tied to having my hair straightened and not natural, and like how I perceive myself as pretty or not pretty based on my hair, and how societal pressure puts a lot on women, on black women in particular, where people just think like, oh, black women just love spending tons of money on their hair because they're just like careless and they're frivolous. And it's like, for black women in particular, it's that's like the first thing that people see about you. Yeah. And people literally decide who you are based on what your hair means to them. And so when we're spending this money on our hair, it is not just because we just want to blow hundreds of dollars. It's really like, this will affect what kind of jobs I get. This will affect like what kind of dates I get asked out on. And so there's all these factors that go into it. And then like makeup, and I live in Brooklyn, and even living in Brooklyn, it's hard.
It's a tribe. Brooklyn's a tribe.
It's hard for me to find foundation sometimes. I'm like, okay, this is annoying.
If you can't find it in Brooklyn, like where?
Yeah. So there's a lot to it, and it's.
So you do feel there is still a standard, and you're striving for it.
For sure. But I feel like I'm just pretty much like, I'm just gonna do me. I'm 31. I don't give a shit anymore. I really don't. I just don't. It's like whatever.
People do evolve as they get older. Emily, your book actually talks about hair quite a bit. The standard.
I'm very excited to read Phoebe's as soon as it comes out, because I'm obviously obsessed with hair. And I had a lot of hair issues growing up for a white girl, which is that my hair is quite coarse and curly, and I always tried to straighten it. My parents kept it short. My parents were very practical, Midwestern types. My mother would never call herself feminist, but you know, they were coming out of that hippie era, and the idea of doing anything, makeup, hair, nail polish, like I really didn't do it when I was growing up because I really wasn't allowed. It was just frowned upon. They were very practical people. And so I have a complex relationship to beauty, which is that I was kind of a tomboy, and I was kind of raised in this natural setting where you don't do this stuff, because why would you? Because it's just dumb. And then at the same time, you know, as I got older, you know, into adolescence, I was exploring that more. And that was, for me, a kind of rebellion, I think, was, you know, to embrace anything that was super feminine, because I was, you know, dressing in my brother's clothes and wearing short hair my whole life. But so I've always had a very complicated relationship with my hair, and whether or not to grow it, whether or not to cut it. Right now, I mean, I was just here doing an event at the Strand about 2 months ago. I don't know if anyone was at the Bad Women event, but at that point my hair was much darker. I've let it go silver. So that's my struggle now, is whether or not I'm going to let it silver. But
I love the fact that, like, all of you have so much to say about this. When you think, like, it's such a it seems superficial. It's just what we look like, but it does mean so much to us.
It's definitely not superficial.
Yeah, it's not, though.
It's not.
And Autumn, in your book, you talk about not so much a beauty standard, but a beauty imperative. Can you explain what that means and what you really are trying to say with that?
Yeah, in interviewing women for the book, I found that, as Georgia points out, like, there's not necessarily there's no longer one beauty standard. There's a lot of different beauty standards. But the thing that all those standards have in common is that you have to meet them, or you have to appear to be trying to meet them. So the idea is, like, you can have whatever standard you want, boho girl or Upper East Side princess, but whatever it is, it's imperative that you meet it, and that you look like you're trying to meet it. And so, like, there's just that constriction that women face is what I found was more in common, rather than everyone striving for this once upon a time beauty standard that maybe was a little more common, like, say, 30 years ago.
And do you think men have their same kind of standard like that?
I think men definitely, they face pressures, of course, to look a certain way, and I think that that's increasing on men. But as far as, like, the beauty imperative, no, like, men can look like shit, and, like, no, everyone's got, like, we talked about Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. Like, remember when Hillary Clinton, she was Secretary of State, she showed up to a breakfast meeting with no makeup, and people freaked out. Feminists were like, that's awesome, and people were like, why is she doing that? That's unprofessional. Can you imagine if she'd shown up to the Democratic primary debates looking like Bernie Sanders with, like, her hair all over the place? Like, she would have been, you know, hounded down. So the idea is you still have to look a certain way. Like, whatever way you're trying to look, that might vary, but it's imperative that you do it.
You find there is still one. Yeah. So as you guys were writing your books, you have different types of books here. We have a memoir, fiction, nonfiction. Did you find your beauty standard evolving? Like, Phoebe, as you were writing about your hair, or about, you talked to your, I think it's your niece in your book.
Yeah.
Did you find yourself learning new things about, you know, and wanting to move beyond this standard?
I mean, I guess it's kind of easier for me to like move beyond the standard because the standard in America is a white woman and I'm not white, so I'm already out.
So you're just like, fuck it.
You know,
Moving
I'm already,
on.
yeah. So for me, it was just more like me, like looking back on my journey to like where I am now and like having a 2-year-old niece, she's biracial and she's going to face certain challenges too. But she might also get certain advantages because she's very light skinned. And so if you like saw her just like in passing, you go, oh, that's like a little white girl. So, you know, I think what she's going to go through is going to be markedly different than what I go through.
Right.
So it's just more of me just kind of being like, giving her like whatever advice I can based on my time on the planet.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've gotten to a place where I mostly accept the way that I look. I mean,
Sure.
I will always be insecure that my boobs are not bigger, but that's a thing it's fine. At the end of the day, it's like, okay, I'm an A cup, I'm gonna own it.
Wait, so speaking of boobs, in your book, when people took the pretty, I noticed they got bigger boobs, they got longer hair, they got better skin. When you were writing your book, which is fiction, so it's different, did you find yourself being like, I can't believe I'm writing this as the beauty standard still? Did you evolve what you think of as the beauty standard?
I think I wrote the book. I think when you, and any fiction novelists in the room would probably attest to this, like I think after you, or really anyone working on like a creative art piece, like afterwards, after all the dust has settled, you can sort of stand back and look at it and be like, oh, that's why I wrote this. Like, I get it now. And I think I wrote the regulars because I really wanted to address my own self-esteem issues. And at the beginning of the process, I wanted to write about beauty because I went through a couple of, years in New York when I was single and really wanted to be in a relationship and felt I had friends and I had a young adult novel come out, so I sort of, was going okay in other areas, but I would sort of look in the mirror and see an ugly face, and it was this, I came to believe that I was like secretly really ugly and no one was like gonna ever tell me, and I would like cry into like Skype to my mother and be like, I'm so ugly, and she'd be there in Australia being like, you're not, darling, you're so beautiful, as all of our mothers think we're so beautiful. And then I sort of like came out of that dark period and like looked back on it and was like, wow, that was really intense. Why did I feel that way? And if I felt that way, I'm sure I'm not alone. So the book was really to kind of like really force myself to have some hard like conversations to get to a stage where I could look in the mirror and feel satisfied with the face I saw there, which I think is it is a difficult journey to go through, and it is like a journey I think every like woman, you kind of have to, it's like on you, no one else can like help you get there. And a couple of things really changed. When I was writing the book, I stopped wearing makeup to work because I was writing the book in between working in like a sort of a vaguely corporate creative job at a premium cable company 4 days a week. And I'd like wear makeup in the morning, I just like, foundation, blush, mascara. Like it wasn't like a full show, but it wasn't nothing. And as I was writing it, I'm like, well, I don't really like wearing it, and I don't think anyone really cares. And I sort of spend all day like being like, oh no, I can't touch my face. Like, and I love rubbing my face and just like I'm always like wiping my eyes. And I'd be like, I can't be human. And I just was like, I think I'm just going to stop wearing it to work. And of course, nothing happened. Like no one even knew. And I was like, oh, that feels good, And I think
when you wear makeup, do you ever wear makeup now? And if you do,
no,
why?
I don't.
Never.
No,
not right now.
I'm wearing it right now.
Okay.
Wake up like this.
So that's an interesting topic. When you do actually put it on now, what's the reason you're putting it on then?
Yeah, I really decided to wear it if I was like celebrating something, like rather than just wearing it as like a kind of part of the uniform.
Armor.
Yeah, it's like armor. I would be wearing it because like I'm excited to be here and I'm like, putting on like a nice outfit, or I'm like at a party I want to be at. Rather than like, I wouldn't wear it if I was like going to work or just going to the bank.
The office does not merit that. Like,
No,
no, they don't need that.
they're not going to have me there. Are you kidding?
And Emily, what about you? Do you wear makeup? And if you do, why do you wear it?
I'm wearing makeup now, and you should all consider yourselves special.
Special occasions only.
Yeah. No, I wear it if I'm going out to an event. If I'm on stage, I wear it. In my neighborhood, I do not wear it. If I'm going for coffee with an old friend, no way. If I'm going for coffee with someone I need to impress, or I want to impress, or they're new and I'm excited about them, then I wear it. But it's really...
Are you mad that you have to put it on for
No,
them?
I don't have to put it on. It's something I didn't wear makeup at all when I was young, at all. Like chapstick before I went out. That was getting ready. And as I've gotten older, because I'm 42 now, I tend to wear a little bit more because my complexion is not what it was, and it just evens me out a bit. But I really...
So it's more of like a little corrective and a little confidence boost.
A little confidence boost. But, I mean, it's really funny. We're talking about beauty standards, and I feel like when I'm out and about in the city and I'm riding on the subway, I look at people and I just think everyone is so beautiful. Like, everyone that I see is so lovely. Like the older women, the young men, the young queer girls, everybody's so beautiful to me. I just look at them and I'm like, they're so beautiful. And I was thinking about this and I was like, but why do I have this perfect standard for myself? And for everybody else, I'm like, I just see them and I like them. So
I think a lot of women do that.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking, is that I think a lot of people feel that way when they look in the mirror. They see the flaws.
Yeah.
But someone else would see the strengths.
Right. And Autumn, you have firsthand experience with this. You interviewed hundreds of women for your book, Face Value. What did you find like the reason they put makeup on was? Was it one reason? Were there lots of reasons?
There were lots of reasons, and that was one of the more interesting things that emerged for me, because I've always worn makeup, but I was wearing it more to just conceal. Like, I would wear like literally concealer on my face or mascara to like correct the white tips of my lashes. And what I found in talking with women and in looking at academic research on this was that there's a zillion reasons why women wear makeup. But we primarily, like, women do wear it to conceal, and we wear it to enhance or to attract. Evolutionary biologists would have a field day with that. But the idea being, like, as I wrote the book, I got more and more entranced with the idea of wearing makeup for fun and for pleasure and for not attracting attention from men or whatever, but just almost like a butterfly. Like, I wanted to be more colorful, so I wear a lot more makeup now.
Look at the Olympics. Like, we were just talking about this. I don't think they're putting makeup on to like hide anything. It's a celebratory thing. Phoebe, do you wear makeup every day? And if so, why?
No.
Just forget it.
No, I mean, my mom never really wore makeup. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and I never really wore makeup. I want to say I think the first time I really wore makeup was my senior prom, and I went to the mall. And because my mom doesn't know how to do makeup, so I had to go to like this. It's like this kiosk outside, like a Dillard's or whatever. And the woman did my makeup, and she. And I look at the pictures now. She like didn't have the right foundation, so it was like kind of like a weird like Casper-y ghost thing happening on my face, and I was like, this is what it's like to be black, okay? Yeah, my rule is if it's over 80 degrees and I don't have a shoot, I do not wear makeup because I'm a sweaty person. I don't have time for it. So I've been barefaced like all of August. It's been
like a
phenomenal.
purely logical decision. I
It's
like
so
that.
nice.
There's rules even.
Yeah, so it's really only for like if I have to be on camera or if I'm like going on a date, maybe like the first like 5 dates, I'll be like, all right. And after that, I'm like, this is me. It's fine.
I've actually met women that are married to people and still get up early to put on makeup.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? They get up early to put on makeup.
It doesn't matter. And if he cares, he's a piece of garbage.
It
like,
make
it
a great-
doesn't.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, get a grip. Like, looks just don't matter. I just don't care.
Well, hopefully not to the person you're sleeping with.
Right.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they do. You want to be attracted to the person, but that, like, presentational kind of, like, you have to, like, to expect your partner to look a specific way all the time, like, that's
Crazy talk.
crazy. Yeah.
And you ladies that worked in fiction, that wrote fiction, when you were creating your characters, did you like pull out an ad from a magazine and be like, I'm going to just, like, how do you come up with a look for a girl when it's not you? It's not the way you feel about beauty or hair. Why don't you go ahead, Georgia?
With the regs, it was really important for me to have 3 different young women. They're all in their early 20s. And I definitely didn't want to have like 3 white characters. So there's Krista is Southeast Asian. I had like a Southeast Asian Australian roommate back in Australia, and she's modelled, don't tell her, just between us, modelled pretty heavily on that character in this book. She's Krista, and she's like Southeast Asian American. And Evie and Willow, who's Dutch American. And for their looks, like in fiction, I think you really want to have like a light touch when describing how someone looks. Like you sort of want it to feel like the narrator never actually told you how they look, but you have a very clear idea in your head. So in creating their looks, I mean, they all sort of like, they all physically look different, and they all have different attitudes towards beauty and have different kind of takes on their self-esteem. It's really kind of my personality in a way, just sort of broken down into 3 different categories and sort of like heightened. So that's kind of how I like approach their sort of looks. And I wanted them to feel like people that they're from Brooklyn, you know, like I like writing in this book, it's people that are familiar to me, like my community and
Your tribe.
yeah, my tribe.
Emily, what about you? How do you describe your characters? How do you come up with their looks?
Well, the lead character in the book is, her name is Hazel, and she's a redhead, and I did that because a book about blondes raging out, I didn't want to play the blonde brunette dynamic, and so I thought, let's put her in the middle, right in the middle. So maybe she can be, you know, at risk for this blonde virus, or maybe not. And I also wanted to do that because, you know, red hair is very rare, and there are stereotypes around all kinds of hair types. And I wanted the book to explore not just hair color, but also how we identify with hair. So everyone is at risk for the virus eventually. Women of color who bleach their hair are at risk. Older women, suddenly people think they're at risk because they're silver-haired, because they're gray-haired, which is close to blonde.
We're screwed.
Yep, everybody's screwed, and it basically, you know, it becomes like this parable about discrimination against women in general, and also women and how we find power. For Hazel, I made her kind of a frumpy character. She's a grad student, and that's how she would describe herself. She narrates the book, so she describes herself as being slightly chubby with glasses and terrible, terrible hair, and it's interesting because that's her perception. But at the same time, I think if you were to meet her, I don't know who she would be, because I think there are a lot of people who would describe themselves that way who don't actually look that way.
It's what we talked about before, where we all are harsher to ourselves than we are to other women in a way.
But then there are other characters in the book too. Like there's Moira, who's her roommate, who's black, and there's another friend who's blonde and supposed to be stunningly beautiful named Larissa, who's at risk for the virus. And sometimes what I do when I'm writing fictional characters, because as you were saying, you need to have a physical image. And so sometimes I do use physical images. I like to, I don't know, I feel kind of guilty admitting this, but I like to go on Facebook, and what I'll do is I'll click through to friends or acquaintances' photos and then look at their photos of their other friends that I don't know. And sometimes I'll pull up images and I'll use a face, like then I can have a face in front of me to write a character.
So there's someone on Facebook that is like a killer blonde that you are describing.
Well, actually, the killer blondes in the novel were inspired by a Gucci ad that ran in about 2009, and it was these 4 women in like safari wear and jungle wear, and they were very, very emaciated, as you know, sometimes models are, and they just looked like they were ready to kill somebody. They look kind of vampiric.
Listen, I work at a fashion magazine. I feel like half of our photo shoots that we do are like women that are just like hate the world and want to kill someone. They never look happy to me. But it brings up a good point, which is sort of, you know, advertising and media, a lot of it is super retouched. Even those women were probably not as skinny as they were retouched to be. And, you know, it's become a political issue a bit. There's a bill in Congress right now, it hasn't been voted on, about retouching. Where do we want to have the Federal Trade Commission look at advertisements and see if they are retouched, and if they are, is that harming people? So I wanted to check in with you ladies, since you're sort of all about this world right now. Do you think it's okay that we retouch photos, and do you think there's any harm in that? Phoebe, do you want to go ahead?
I mean, I don't mind the occasional retouching.
Yeah.
It's fine. For my book cover, I was like, I saw the original shot and I was like, this is my face. I like this picture. I noticed that I have laugh lines because I tend to laugh a lot. So I was like, if we could just minimize that, that'd be great. But it wasn't like I wasn't like, make my face thinner. I was like, I don't want to do that.
Right.
But just like,
Clean it up a bit.
Clean it up a little bit. I think it's fine. But I definitely do think because they're like, I don't know, like on Instagram, people are like photoshopping pictures to be free. And like, it's fucking Instagram. It should just be like you take a picture, you just throw it up, you put like a funny caption. But like, it's no longer just magazines. Like people think they have to Photoshop their own pictures.
Right, because if
You know
there's
what
a
I mean?
bill and we're doing it for magazines, like, are you going to go on the Instagram feed of that girl that's everybody's friends here who you know face-tuned the shit out of her face?
Yeah.
So,
And you can't say anything to be like, great picture. And it's like, everyone knows the lie.
Like,
But
you
we
don't
all
look like that.
Yeah, you don't look like that. And you don't need to look like that. So
Yeah.
I do think that like photoshopping has kind of mutated into a thing that was just like a tweaks here and there to now something that's become aspirational. And I think people, especially who are younger and haven't grown up in a world where you like don't have to Photoshop your own personal pictures.
Yeah.
They think that is like normal.
right.
And that's what they should do in order to be pretty, in order for guys to like them, in order for them to have friends. So that's the part where it's like it's gotten out of control, in my opinion.
And Autumn, when you were researching your book, you did a lot of research on what it means, like scientifically, what women think about when they see these retouched images. What did you come away with thinking about this whole topic?
You know, it's interesting. I think that the Truth in Advertising bill, I'd like to see it pass because I think that we as consumers should be aware when a product is being sold to us under photoshopped guise. That said, I think that a lot of the talk about Photoshop is making us all hate ourselves is sort of overblown. I feel like, first of all, what it does, I feel like it can rob women of the agency to look at an image critically and be like, yeah, I know what's going on there. We do all know what's going on in images. That said, we also have a knee-jerk reaction to it because images are very, dear to our heart. What I found was that we've really, as a culture, have focused pretty strongly on the negative impact the images have had on us, idealized images. But in fact, we have a range of reactions to idealized images. We can have the comparison reaction where we look at an ideal image and are like, oh gosh, I'll never look like that because she looks amazing and I look human. But you can also look at an image and have an identification response where you look at an idealized image and feel more ideal yourself. And there have been studies that have shown this. And so it's interesting to me that I feel, as a feminist, of course, I want images to help women's lives, not hurt them. But it's interesting that we've focused only on the ways in which images have harmed us instead of the richer ways that we actually interact with them. And it's interesting to see how that plays out, how that does play out on our social media feeds. I remember, like, when social media was a new thing, like on Friendster, people didn't really know what pictures.
You just dropped Friendster.
I totally just dated myself. Friendster, yo. People didn't really know what pictures to post of themselves. So it was this weird thing of like...
Nobody had a headshot back then. Everybody's got a headshot now.
Well, it's funny though, because my first online profile, like I put my senior picture on. Like,
Your
from
literal
high school.
Facebook
My
picture.
exactly. And it's funny now, because I feel like now we know if you post a picture that's too idealized of yourself, then you're gonna like fall short when people meet you and you're like, oh, you don't look like that. So we've also had this response of like, you have to really know what you look like to have like a successful social media presence. So.
And what about you, Georgia? Are you down with this bill? Do you think there needs to be regulation, or do you think it's like we all know what's going on?
I think the bill's a good idea. I think it's a good thing to give like something that's actionable. Like there's a lot of talk right now about the anti-photoshopping movement, and I think we're all generally on the same page. But as apart from all of the personal growth that we can do around that, like I think it's good to have something that is it seems like a progressive political step forward. I know it's a Republican that put it forward, which is so interesting. I'm like curious to see how it might play out, if it might just be another example of like men telling women what to do with their bodies. Like it sort of could be a conservative sort of thing in the end, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. I feel like what's important to me, and I think what is sort of part of my values as a creator, is rather than having like less photoshopped images of very beautiful women, just to create and have more diverse faces and bodies in the media and in pop culture. And that's kind of, I think, a better like thing to like agitate for, and also to sort of like support, create, like if you're a creator, just to be kind of aware, and I'm sure that that's something that we're already doing, but like to make sure that you're just like not putting for a straight white male cast.
But when you say diversity, and maybe this will be one of our last questions, what is diverse these days? Because I know when they do diversity at a fashion magazine where I work, it's like skinny, pretty people, but there's a black one and an Indian and a what. You know, it's not diverse like you look out into real people and diversity. So have you, Phoebe, have you noticed a change in the way people are trying to be more inclusive, or do you still feel like diversity has a way to go? We're like barely there.
I mean, I feel like it's kind of gotten better.
What about when you're auditioning?
Oh, it's a dumpster fire still. It's still like, it's always like I'm like the best friend. I'm never the love interest. It's either best friend or it's an assistant to like some like asshole white dude. I'm like, oh, Gary, and it's like I'm like amused by him being like a jerk off, and that's it. I'm never the lead of my own story. Like my character
like
has
you could be in the movie, but you're not going to be the
right.
lead.
Like there's no internal motivation. And I've gotten to a place where like I tell my agents where I would be like, I'm not auditioning for this. This is garbage. Like I straight up would be like, this is offensive. I'm not going to perpetuate this. But I mean, I feel like what's gotten better is that there's technology. So it's like, you can just create your own web series, or you can write your own books. I guess there's also you can always write your own books. But I guess the point is that that's not new. But part of the reason why I got a book deal was because of my blog. So that's like technology. There you go. I figured it out. You can have a WordPress or whatever. But so basically, there's a way for people who haven't seen themselves reflected to get their voices out, and in that way, other people will gravitate towards that and be like, oh, there's value in that. Because I think a lot of times, if you're not the standard, people go, there's no value in that. So you kind of have to prove it first. And then people go, oh, I guess I'll give you it's a little bit. It's not what I would give like the straight white dude. So I feel like things are slowly changing, but it's also like...
But it's on us to keep them,
right.
Make your own things so that it will keep changing.
Yeah, and we have to bring other people along. Like I'm excited, for instance, Fresh Off the Boat is an amazing show. But it's like that shouldn't be the only show that has Asian leads. Like that's insane to me.
Beware of tokenism.
Right. And they've been very smart about that show is not trying to represent the entire Asian experience.
Right.
It's very specific in a way that's also universal. Mm-hmm. So I think it's people just have to make it a priority to want to have diverse voices in comedy and literature and life and advertisement and beauty. And most people don't make it a priority because most people don't care. It feels great to say, I care and I want diversity, but it's a lot of work to actually do it, especially if that's not your instinct to care about other people who don't look like you.
And I think it's hard as well, it does require you going outside of your own experience, and that's definitely a tricky thing. I really want to have a diverse range of characters, and that means that you have to ask people and seek out that information, and that is more work. It's so easy to write something from your perspective. I'm a queer Australian, so I can write a million stories about queer Australians, but it's so much harder for me to sort of do the work of getting into other perspectives. But it's vital, and it's really, you have a responsibility too, I think, to do that in this day and age.
You guys especially, as authors and creators, you're the ones that are going to be able to push this conversation forward. So I think we're about out of time for our panel part, but I know you guys probably have questions for our panelists. Anybody want to start out with a question?
I'll do my best to bring a mic around, but there's a lot of you.
You get to hold a microphone if you
If
ask
you feel
a
like
question.
shouting, go ahead.
I can hear
Do
you.
it.
We're recording it.
I'm trying to work on my delivery skills, period. But I think that some of us are here because we are women creators, and this is less of a beauty question and more of navigating in a world where you're not necessarily using your beauty to get in the door. I noticed that LinkedIn is supposed to be this forum for like helping you acquire new opportunities for work, but I feel like it's become like this extension of like Facebook, and people are like sending their photos along with resumes, because like now all of a sudden it's like people need to know what you look like before they hire you or look at your skill set. So I guess since all of you are in a successful place, like how have you like kind of not used your beauty to like ascend up the ranks?
Good question. Nobody wants to answer because then they're like admitting, I have beauty and I didn't use it. Go ahead.
Well, I started out in stand-up comedy, which I feel like is the priority isn't on looks. You can, I mean, somewhat, but like not really. Like it matters that you're funny. Like you just have to bring it. You just have to be good at your job. And now acting, that's like a totally different thing, and that's a lot of it you can't control. And what do you want to do specifically career-wise? Oh, what I'm doing? Oh, you want to do stand-up? Just go do stand-up. Just go do it.
Not just stand-up, but like I followed a lot of your comedic writing, like both on your blog, like your contributions to Broad City. Like I'm familiar with your stand-up thing.
Oh, thank you.
It's not just like from a standpoint, because like your current podcast is like too many white men. Like that.
Well, no, so many, not too many. People get so mad. There's not too many. There's just a lot. And that's fine. It's an observation. Just want to clear that because people get mad. Yeah. Yeah, I think honestly, you just have to self-create. That's like the only way. Like, nobody was like, oh, we want to hear what Phoebe has to say. Like, all of my stuff, I just sort of like self-generated. And it led to, like, when Jess and I started our show, we were just doing it at UCB East as just because we had fun hanging out with each other. And then it turned into, I was like, hey, we should make it a podcast. And I was like, maybe we can just like tape it ourselves and just throw it up on iTunes. And she was like, well, maybe we can make it a little more professional, go like WNYC. And I was like, good point. But I was just really I think you just have to find out like what turns you on creatively and just make yourself the star of like your content. Because, I mean, I think even when women are successful, there's like, Amy Schumer is like the female comedian right now, which is like cool, but there's like thousands of female comedians, but it gets reduced as like she's like the only one that can be on top right now. So I think you just really, if you self-create and just throw a lot of stuff out there, a lot of things like may not be good. You know what I mean? Like garbage blog posts I've written where I've been like, that is terrible, I'm embarrassed, whatever. And you just create your own stuff because fuck LinkedIn. Can I say that? Is that okay? Like I'm wanting to, it's so dumb. Like it helps in a way, but I feel like doing your own stuff, you become your calling card, and you're gonna, the people are gonna gravitate towards you that have the same mind, like mind. Is that the word? I can't talk. I've been talking all day for work, so I'm like, blah. But like attracts like. And so if you're doing stuff that you love, and people get you, those are going to be the people that you want to work with anyway. So like most of the work is done by you just doing what you want to do.
You know,
Don't play the game. Be genuine, I feel like is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Autumn,
Oh, thanks.
Autumn, you were saying?
yeah, I'm going to jump in on the idea that you are your own calling card, because that's absolutely true. And this sort of goes back to the question, like as far as related to beauty. I sort of had to recognize that, like, frankly, there is a sweet spot of like looking pretty enough, but not looking too pretty. Because like any woman who's ever, you know, I'm a writer, not a performer. If you're a woman who writes and your picture is out there in any way, people will critique you for either side. And so for me, it was a thing of like, okay, well, let's try to hit that sweet spot, you know, like don't look like you're trying too hard, which is just a mirror really of what I think I experienced just before I started writing at all. Like just women, how do you look like you are just naturally pretty, but not like you're striving to be pretty? And that's just, so it's just really like a magnifying glass on what I think women face already for myself.
Yeah, when I was first starting to write, I had a blurry author photo that my husband took in a grocery store. And then for my second novel, I said I don't want an author photo, period. So we didn't put one out with it. And I probably would have gotten more reviews if I'd had an author photo. And then...
Good tip.
Yeah. Now I live in New York. All of that was back in Toronto in the days before Facebook, when you could maybe get away with not having an author photo. Now I have author photos, and so The Blondes just came out, and I'm working on the next book, and I don't know when it will come out, soon, I think. But it's kind of a butchy book. Like, it's about men, and it's about prohibition, and it's tough. And my writing is actually quite hard, and then I look soft, and that sometimes confuses people. And so my husband said to me, go to a professional author shoot. And so I called up a friend who's a photographer. You know, it's not like I booked someone I didn't know. And I went to her house, and I had 3 different outfits, and we did a photo shoot. But I made sure that my tattoo was showing in all of them, because I was like, this is a hard-ass book. So the author photo
Branding.
has to...
It's all about branding.
It has to suit a little bit. And actually, I have to admit that I was much happier with the photos she took, because I feel like I look more like myself. Even though I changed outfits several times, I look much more like myself, and I feel like it suits the material. So to me, it's about suiting the material. But I mean, you know, before I didn't have great author photos, and I still managed to do okay, because I think people will take you seriously if you take yourself seriously and you put out good work.
Other questions for any of our panelists? Yes?
Where do you guys find stuff by other women? Like, where are you looking?
Where do we find stuff, as in books or content, or for other women? Sure, Georgia. I feel like you have an answer.
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of reading. As a writer, you have to kind of read your genre. You sort of read your kind of colleagues' work. You are reading what you're researching next. And most of the things that kind of end up in front of me are, this is a bad answer, but it's like word of mouth. So like if like 3 people tell me a book is great, I'll probably check it out. And really it's just like the boring places like Facebook and Twitter and things like that. I don't really have like a cool answer of like a hip Tumblr that I'm finding, but I like my stack of books to read is always way too big, so I'm like always like scrabbling to keep up with it. Oh, the Strand. That's everything I said before. Ignore it. That was my answer.
Other questions? Yeah.
Fire all of you. I think all of you are great. Oh, thank you. I think all of you are great, but who inspired you and like made you want to be where you are today?
Who wants? Autumn's got one ready.
I will say unabashedly Naomi Wolf, who in the years since the beauty myth has sort of gone in a very different direction. But her book was incredibly important for women. I'm 40 years old. So for like Generation X women was enormously important. Just the ideas that she was really one of the early prominent voices talking about how the ways that beauty was affecting us. And that was just crucial for me. So that's.
Emily?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay. I thought you were like, that's not true. This is
No, I was sitting there befuddled, like going like, I don't know, my parents, you know.
Do you want to think? And
What about you, Georgia?
well, one like really important pop culture experience for me was Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Drops mic, yes.
Chosen One fans. Buffy was a show that came on when I was in maybe first year uni, like I was like 19 or 20.
Wait, is that high school or college?
College.
Okay.
And
Australian.
it was back when there was like 5 TV channels in Australia, and Buffy was on one of them. And it wasn't until I started watching Buffy that I realized that all the other shows that I watched and like enjoyed were like sexist, and they weren't inclusive. And like within pop culture, like I was a student activist, like a pretty political student activist, and I had very high standards for the company I kept, and I was always at a rally. Like if there was a spray painted t-shirt, I was wearing it, with a new kind of like demand every week. But then I would kind of watch Friends or Seinfeld and be like, oh, this is great. And when I watched Buffy, I was like, oh, this is a show about female power, and there are gay, like queer characters on it. Like we all remember, hopefully we all remember Willow and Tara, and it was and that really kind of made me realize, like, oh, that's kind of what I want to do. Is like, I want to make pop culture that is funny and entertaining, but has like a progressive set of values, and that isn't something that when I watch it, I'm just having to ignore the sexist parts, or like just sort of like ignore the parts that like are you edit out stuff so much. And that was a show that was very like sort of meaningful for me.
What about you, Phoebe? Mentors, pop culture that you've looked up to?
Yeah, I mean, so I didn't really listen to much stand-up until I started doing stand-up, because I got into it just on a whim because a friend wanted to take a stand-up class, so I took it with her. But like growing up, my show was Felicity, and I was like, this is gonna be my life. I'm gonna move to New York and wear chunky sweaters and have two guys really be into that, and like that didn't happen. I was like, okay, cool. But I find like inspiration in like all sorts of things, like music. Like I love going to concerts. Like that's like my church for me, where I feel like really inspired and I feel like really hopeful about humanity. But then there's all, like I read.
Wait, what shows are we talking about?
Well, literally, like obviously,
don't tell us U2.
Obviously U2, but like they're my favorite band. Don't judge me. I judge myself enough for it. But it's also like literally any concert. Like I went and I saw Erykah Badu for the first time like 3 weeks ago. She was like incredible. So
That was your first time?
my first time seeing her. Yeah. And because
That's like church. You get a good feeling.
yeah, so I get inspired by that, but then I read it because my book is an essay collection, so I read like a lot of essay collections, and like someone like Mindy Kaling, like I think she's so funny and hilarious, and she's her own boss, and so I really gravitate towards that. So yeah, just a lot of women inspire me.
I'm going to take away Erykah Badu and Felicity, if that's okay with you.
Okay, sure, do it. We can share. Yeah.
Yes, question back there. In the Navy.
I just want to say I'm very proud that the two of you who are over 40 came right out with it. And as a 57-year-old woman, I feel there's a big issue with ageism and women and beauty, and I'd love to hear your reaction to that.
First of all, you look amazing.
Hell yeah.
No. True. But as I already told you, I think everyone's lovely. You look great.
Yeah.
Wait, in the green room, we were just talking about this actually, because I had a woman in her 80s on my podcast, Fat Mascara, and I was just like, she's the freaking bomb. I cannot wait to be an older woman who doesn't give a fuck, who gets to say what they want. I feel like there's a freedom that comes with age, and a lot of people like to focus on the negative side of it, but as we kind of all mentioned that we felt more sure of our looks as we got older. Like imagine, 50 years from now, how we're going to feel. What do you think, Georgia?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, of course. We are a culture that's obsessed with youth because we're all going to die. And, I mean, it's a reality, and it's sort of just one of the bizarre elements of the human condition. And I definitely would and I love seeing anything that has older women with sexuality and with their, like a strong sense of self in any form of culture. And I would love to see more of that. And I mean, the older you get, I'm 36, and definitely as the years go by, you really kind of start to realize how much of on television and magazines is this everyone's 17 years old. And it's such a strange thing because, what is it? I mean, I hope there's no 17-year-olds in the room, but what does a 17-year-old know about life? I knew nothing, So there is this need to not only celebrate older women because, A, we're all going to become one, hopefully, but there is so much, wisdom and knowledge, and I feel like I always get so much out of hearing anyone who's, a couple of generations older than me, speak. My hero is my mom, and, her perspective on life is just so invaluable to me. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, Autumn, when you were doing your research, did you come away with anything on that topic?
Oh yeah, all the research points toward to go to the point of the panel, to women being happier with how they look as they age, which is interesting because we still do have this idea that youth is beauty. I do think that's changing. I think that you see a lot of older women who are considered beautiful, but they still have to look older in the right way, not most of us are not going to
Bernie Sanders older.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, most of us don't have that Carmen Delorfiche perfect silver hair. But yeah, it's interesting that women unilaterally feel better about their looks the more that they age. So.
How do you explain
I mean, that's
For men too. I mean, I'm just
Yeah,
going to put
no,
it out
it is-
there.
it is increasing
Being a
among
beauty
men.
writer, men feel that pressure too, and they're getting Botox and things like that now as well.
Something that I found really interesting as an author who came from Canada and now lives here is in Canada, I did let my hair silver for a while, and it helped me gain credibility because they don't want young novelists in Canada. They want people with wisdom. When I came here, this is a different culture, and I started dyeing my hair again, and now I've just let it go recently. Because here, the United States seems to want young novelists, the new young hot thing. And I think it's really interesting that there are differences sometimes across cultures, even very close cultures like that.
Right.
Something that happened after the last panel that I did at Strand just a couple months ago was a woman came up to us afterwards and approached the book table and said, "Oh, but you women, you're all under 40, right?" And it was kind of an interesting moment because it was a way of putting down the women who were on the panel and saying that they had no life experience in a way to play up their youth like that. So I think whether you're young or whether you're old, there are
can't
these...
win.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Last question right here. If you
Good evening, everybody. You actually segued perfectly into my question because I consider myself a social media observer on all major channels, and what I'm seeing now is the rise of the young, teenage, early 20-something social media influencer who has millions of followers and they're being paid to tweet about these products and these clothing lines. And it's so problematic because on the one hand, social media has democratized how we project ourselves to the world, but on the other hand, it's created this temple, like the Oracle of Delphi, of youth. And you're not necessarily seeing women over 40 with the million followers or the $1 million book deals or the clothing lines or the makeup lines. And I wanted to know, what was your take on that?
None of us have 1 million followers.
Yeah, we're all in trouble.
I'm just going to put it out there. I feel like because we all have one of these now, that is part of, it's a problem, but it's also a great thing. But someone was talking about why they wear makeup, and it's because someone's going to take a photo of me at any moment and any time, because you can't get away from cameras at this point. So I do think part of, if you're using social media as your lens for that, you are going to come away with a thought like you have, because it is very narrow focused. But if you look around this room and you look at the authors of the books on the shelves and don't just look at social media, I feel like you're going to have a more positive view of it. Do any of you guys have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I also feel like that doesn't last. Like, that's not... Like, those people aren't necessarily going to have careers. Like, there's a difference between, like, being popular and having 4 million followers, and then, like, what are they going to do when they're 45?
I always think that too.
What is your skill set?
They're
What
going
is
to
your...
face-tune the shit out of it.
Yeah, it's like, what are your skills? What are you going to contribute actually to the planet and to, like, whatever industry that you're in? So, like, I just think, like, yeah, it sucks that, like, certain things are popular when there are things that maybe you feel like are better quality that aren't popular, but popularity fades. Like, to me, it sucks in the short term, but in the long term, it like doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't matter to me as much.
So I feel like we need to come back in 10 years. You guys will all have written another book, and we will reassess the state of beauty. This was such a great panel. You guys are awesome, such smart women. Thank you for your books. Thanks for coming here tonight.
Thank you. You did an amazing job moderating. Yeah, you killed it.
Great work, Jen.